Very excited to have this next gentleman on. He's a researcher, and we're very excited to have him on. Please welcome Luke Angstadt. How are you, buddy?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Sam. How are you?
Luke, thank you so much. We started a little later than we planned, so I appreciate you working with us. Luke, thanks for joining us. For those who may not be familiar with you, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and where our listeners can find you?
Oh, sure. So my name's Luke Angstadt. I'm a writer and researcher on the technological singularity. They can find my website, links to my books and articles that I published with Graham Hancock on the my Google site that will be included with this episode. So they can find I've written 3 articles published on Graham Hancock's website, two books specifically on the technological singularity that are available on Amazon. Their titles are We Are It, The Return of Pure Cosmic Consciousness, and Into the Great Beyond, The Return of Pure Cosmic Consciousness. So they're kind of like they're a pair. They're coming at the technological singularity from slightly different tones, but the one into the Great Beyond is looking at it from more of a religious, spiritual, metaphysical perspective. It's comparing the yogi path to God consciousness with the gospel of Jesus Christ in the New Testament, finding the God within us and how that kind of dovetails with the technological singularity. And then the other one that I mentioned, We Are It, The Return of Pure Cosmic Consciousness, is looking at it from more of a broader historical, philosophical, practical, political perspective of what we're going through right now. So that's what I do, Sam.
I love it. This is my jam right here. I'm all about that because I'm on a spiritual journey. And for me, it's like really about I'm not really into organized religion. I really like the teachings of Jesus, and I think that's very important. Where do you think we live? Let's start with that. That's a crazy ass question to jump off of. But if someone goes, where do you think we live? What is this world we live in? What is this universe we live in?
That's a great question. I was going to ask you where you wanted to start.
Let's go start there.
That's it. It's really simple. You know, it's complex, but ultimately it's simple. And I think that once you find like the skeleton key that brings it all together, everything starts to make a lot more sense. And then all the near infinity of detail starts to make a lot of sense once you know where to begin. And where to begin is we are within God's dream, because there is nothing but God's dream. There's nothing but consciousness, and we are avatars of God having an experience. As the late great British lecturer Alan Watts said, that the creation is where God comes to play hide and seek with Himself, and it's like a sleight of hand. It's difficult to quite put our finger on this, and maybe even when we do put our finger on it, it slips away from us, and then we get lost in all the minutia and the mundanity of our everyday lives. But I do believe it is that simple at the very essence of existence itself. That's what's happening here. And I believe that once enough people have a broad understanding of the technological singularity in an historical framework, it's going to start to make a lot of sense. And all this stress, worry, and fear and anxiety of ripping our hair out each day as the world gets increasingly crazier and crazier each day, yeah, I do believe that's going to vanish by the wayside. I do. But that's where we're at, Sam.
No.
We are avatars in God's dream. We are God playing hide and seek with Himself.
I love that, dude. That is the best line ever. Like
I said, I got to give that one credit to Alan Watts. I mean, anytime I can't pass that one off.
I respect that, dude. I respect that. I do that a lot when I go on these big podcasts, and when I'm dropping something I've learned, I always try to give credit to the people I learned it from, and hoping I get their names correct.
Sure.
Let's get into this, because the first talking point you sent me, I really like. It's going to be the jumping point of everything, which is, what is the technological singularity? I think there's a lot of negative view of it. I think that's adding to all this panic that's going on right now. And maybe I'm off when I say Palantir and all that stuff, but maybe I'm wrong with that. But what is your take on what is the technological singularity?
Sure. So there was a bit of coincidence that happened in the year 1950. So in 1950, the mathematician John von Neumann, who first worked with, or also worked with Nikola Tesla on the Philadelphia experiment, which I'm sure you're familiar with, The mathematician John von Neumann was the man who was first credited with coining the term technological singularity to pretty much signify the moment in time in which we as human beings can no longer maintain a symbiotic relationship with technology because via artificial intelligence, the thinking machines, their computational powers so far exceed ours that we can no longer maintain a symbiotic relationship with technology. And again, John von Neumann was the mathematician who first coined the term technological singularity. Now, in that very same year, 1950, another mathematician and pioneer in artificial and science, excuse me, artificial intelligence and computer science, Alan Turing. He pretty much, I would say that he defined or described the technological singularity with maybe a different vocabulary, but he was describing, I think, essentially the same thing when he first set the parameters by which we would know when artificial intelligence was able to, seamlessly simulate everyday reality with such precision and sophistication that we wouldn't know without the foreknowledge what is a simulation, what is fake, and what is real. And it was also called the imitation game. And Alan Turing was, if anyone doesn't know, he's a brilliant code breaker for the United States and British governments during World War II. He was credited with cracking the Enigma machine of the Nazis. But they made a movie about him, starring Benedict Cumberbatch back in 2014, titled The Imitation Game. But again, this idea of recognizing in the first half of the 20th century, mathematicians and computer scientists were already able to foresee a day coming in the not too distant future where we wouldn't know what is simulated and what is real. And it's spooky. Like we get to a point where, again, since we might as well give credit where credit's due. I mean, right before Terence McKenna, that beautiful, wonderful psychonaut, left his mortal coil in 2000, he did an interview in 1999 where one of the most articulate men who ever lived said that we are fast approaching a moment in time where we would no longer be able to describe the changes and the transformations that the universe existence itself was about to go through. And this was right at the turn of the 21st century. So it all hinges on this idea of the technological singularity and how it literally shows us in a tangible way that life is literally a dream. The perception creates reality, because once you cross that threshold of not knowing if a video or if a conversation that you are watching or hearing or receiving from a glowing screen is the real thing or not, then we are at a point where we are pilgrims in a strange land. I mean, we are pioneers on a new frontier, and I do believe that we have already crossed that threshold.
I would say we are there, right? So my question becomes to you, is our view of this moment, has it been tainted by movies we've been watching forever, that this is the death of man, this is the end of man, this is the end of humans as we know it? And so, Terminator movies, Matrix movies, like forever. Since I was a kid, even before, even the reality of robots as we know them, what is presented to us, whatever DARPA had in the 80s or whatever, but the actual presentation of robots, we have been told they're coming and they're going to destroy us, and we're just an old animal, kind of like the, saber-toothed tiger, and this is the end. Has that tainted how we see this moment in time?
The predictive programming has been around since the beginning of the 20th century. I mean, I remember there was a movie called Metropolis that came out in 1927, which showed a woman, or like a robotic woman, eventually becoming a human being. So that was upwards of 100 years ago. And from 2001: A Space Odyssey, obviously HAL, and the Black Monolith in 1968 that looked eerily reminiscent of a smartphone. So we had movies predicting the smartphone upwards of 50 years prior to them, making their introduction on the temporal plane of existence. So but I mean, and you're getting, this is, let's as far as tainting it, I mean, we're talking about, this is a point where we have to get into when the secret societies that rule this world are making their final play for complete control of planet Earth, and they will eventually lose. But it gets into
Oh, I
what is
love that.
the great work of the ages, what the Freemasonic great work of the ages of reconciling or correcting what they perceive as the error of the creation of our world of duality by the demiurge, and that they are ultimately trying to correct this, what they perceive as the error of the creation of our world of duality. That's where you get the big government, one world order, one world everything. But it's ultimately working back to a singularity. But I'm sure you're familiar with David Icke's work as I am. I've read all of his books. I love his research. But I think if we really put our finger on what's going on here, we have to really take a deep dive into esoteric knowledge and wisdom. And it's not easy to do this because so many of these books are, well, they're not easy. They're not easy. I'm talking to guys like Albert Pike, Paul Foster Case. David Icke references a lot of them. Philip K. Dick, William Blake are various Gnostic researchers where their work found its way into their poetry and their novels, respectively. But what we're ultimately looking at here is the God itself, God Himself, infinite eternal consciousness itself has to reconcile with its shadow. So we're witnessing the transformation, the death agonies of our world of duality into another singularity, going into another singularity. It's going to be both a technological singularity and a spiritual singularity as well. So what we are witnessing the universe. So the universe itself has to slay its shadow. If that's not the best choice of words, it has to reconcile with its shadow, and that's where we. In the Bible, we find it beautifully symbolized with the devil. Obviously, the devil represents the dark side of the universe, and it represents a lot of things to a lot of different people. Some people take it literally, some people take it metaphorically, metaphysically, figuratively. There are a lot of different ways to take it, but ultimately, it's talking about our world of duality being transformed into another singularity. And what really brought all this together for me, Sam, if you don't mind me just trying to bring it down to its very essence, is that back in April of 2023, I saw a conversation between Joe Rogan and Donald Trump that never happened. It was all generated by artificial intelligence, and this is what brought it all together for me.
Hold on.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh. So you're saying somebody created an AI them talking? Or are you
Yeah,
trying to...
are you familiar with that one? It came out in April 2023. It kind of flashed on the internet, and then it kind of went under the radar again. Are you familiar with that video?
No. You're not talking about the actual interview that happened, are you?
No, I'm talking about when it happened. It was a fake conversation that came out in April of 2023.
Oh, no. Do you guys
pretty much brought together all my work.
Okay.
Are you familiar with that one?
No, I haven't seen it. Can you guys try to find it? Can you do something, XG?
Yeah, let me see if I can find it.
He's just like enjoying the conversation.
Do you remember what he said in that? Because they do this a lot. It's really not that hard. Like once you go on Rogan's and you talk for 3 hours, they can just get your AI stuff. And
I mean, there's an AI.
Oh, this happened. This happened prior to Donald Trump going on Rogan.
Oh, prior.
Yeah.
That's so crazy.
Hey,
so there's an introduction in the first minute or so where it says that this is an AI generated conversation, but if a person jumped into this conversation 1 or 2 or 3 minutes into the conversation without being told that it was a simulation, that it was fake, no one would suspect that this was a simulation. I mean, the mimicry of, we all have certain ways of stuttering and our syntax and certain words in our vocabulary that we come to over and over again as we're trying to go from connecting one thought to the next. And it's a very idiosyncratic way of, well, we all have it. And I was just blown away by that AI. It mimicked it with such precision and sophistication that I tested this hypothesis on over 100 people, one of which is a cybersecurity expert who runs his own cybersecurity company. And I played snippets of this conversation for him under the pretense that it was the real thing. And he started laughing and said when he didn't know that Donald Trump was a fan of UFC, and he said that was great. When did he have an opportunity to sit down with Joe Rogan? I said, yeah, that's all fine and dandy that Trump's a fan of the UFC, but I said, well, what's even more interesting about this conversation is that it never happened. And that's when he looked at me with eyes the size of saucers, and unprompted, he said, Luke, that passes the Turing test. And I said, it does indeed. And I said, it opens up questions and it has implications that it's going to take a long time for us to unravel. But in any case, were you guys able to locate that video?
Yeah, I think he has. Maybe it's on Newsweek.
Okay.
Let's see if this is it.
Share it, Johnny. Like
Yeah,
that?
yeah, you have to share it to get the audio. As he's doing that, can I just ask you now? The Turing test, it used to be kind of, the people thought if something passed the Turing test that would be the ultimate intelligence, artificial intelligence. But now it seems with these large language models that they do a good job of mimicking, but there's not actual intelligence there. Now that we actually have something that can pass the Turing test, it doesn't seem as impressive as it did, when that was hypothetical. What do you think about that? Because would you agree that it's not? It doesn't feel like a real intelligence there. It's more of just, as they say.
Have you found
mimicry.
that Joe Rogan just trying to play porn theme music? Yeah, I guess we can't find it, dude. But I remember there was an AI show. But I totally understand what you're saying. Is he still there? I can't see him.
I'm pulling up right now.
So what I want to say to you is there is this belief that we are going to be so overwhelmed with AI fake reality that we're not going to be knowing if we're coming or going. But my question to you is, when was reality real? Like, if we go all the way back to the 60s, all of our culture was manufactured by the CIA. The 60s, the 70s, the 80s, who they put in front of us, what these people said to us, formulated our culture and formulated just how we saw the world. So, like, what is real? What has been real? Like, the hippie movement was a giant CIA psyop. Gangbanger, like gangster rap, psyop. Grunge, psyop. Feminism, psyop. Like, what is real? What is not real? And I get why people are upset. And having this conversation, I'm kind of a little more chilled out about it. But like, what was real? What has been real? What's this tangible thing where you're like, this is real outside of what's in front of you? What are your thoughts on that?
No, it's a great question. I mean, it's forcing us to face these fundamental questions that have remained riddles and mysteries to the human race since time immemorial. And that is, it goes back to the Hindu concept of Maya, that if something vibrates, that it's illusory, that there is nothing real but that vibrationless essence, that source from which everything that is the cosmic dream emanates from. I mean, how many times in the Bible does God speak to the human beings in a dream, in a vision? I mean, this concept of life being illusory and life being a dream has been with us all throughout the ancient world. And I think it's ultimately forcing us to reevaluate these basic fundamental questions of the nature of reality.
Starting to freak out about it. And, we are in a new age right now.
Well, that's literally what singularity means, right? It's a point. It's a metaphor from a black hole, which and the singularity in a black hole is this point beyond which no light can escape. So we have no idea what's beyond that. And the idea is that once we hit this,
aren't you a little freaked out?
It's impossible to predict.
I mean, kind of having this conversation, is kind of lined up with things that I've felt, where it's where I get worried about AI and what is real, what's not real, is when we start getting into crime. That's probably the.
What do you mean, like fake videos of crime?
Fake videos, manipulating the view of a crime, placing people in places maybe they weren't, and then they have to push back against something that.
And everybody has the tools now, and will have the tools. That's the difference, I think, between now and the past that you're talking about.
What will be evidence in a crime? And what will be evidence in a case? Like, that's to me the scariest part. Everything else being like a crazy video. The question is, again, going back, I'm on Twitter. What is real that I've been watching?
Well, it's happening with almost any murder case that is famous now, like the Charlie Kirk. Everybody's fake. That's AI. That's AI. Well, there's this rapper called David.
Yeah.
And there's a girl missing from Lake Elsinore. And if you
David.
look into it, no one knows what's real because you don't know if the screenshots are real. You don't know if the Discord conversation's real because everything can just be edited and everyone just keeps saying it. Allegedly.
No, dude, that to me is the biggest thing. You know, what is real, what's not real. News has never been real. I mean, how many times has Anderson Cooper been caught? Like, he's like, I'm knee deep in a flood. His camera guy's right there looking okay. like what is real, what's not real? I don't want to get too much off it, Luke, but your
TV
thoughts
news has
on
always
that?
sucked for sure.
No, but it brings up. So you bring up a great question with Charlie Kirk and how unnatural and how unreal all the circumstances are surrounding whatever could have very well happened on that day. And this whole mystery of existence goes back to Egypt. It goes back to the origins of Christianity, where how the gospel was adapted from Egyptian sun worship, and how it goes back to the mystery of the Sphinx. And let's start with the Sphinx, and then kind of try and segue into how the Sphinx and the gospel of Jesus Christ and the crucifixion and the resurrection, what happens in that period of the crucifixion and resurrection, how it ties in with the Sphinx. So the Sphinx, for those of you who aren't familiar with the Sphinx, the Sphinx is probably the oldest megalithic structure on Earth, and no one really has any idea how old it is. I mean, I think Dr. Robert Schoch did a fantastic job proving that it's considerably older than the pyramids, and I think he dated it as far back as he was willing to go without risking losing his career, and I admire him and applaud him for that. But the Sphinx is very old. It's I could say for certain that it predates the end of the Ice Age, but that's opening up a whole other can of worms. But let's just stick with the riddle of the Sphinx and how the riddle of the Sphinx is when the Sphinx asked Oedipus, and I think it was it Sophocles, play or what have you. But anyway, the story with the relationship between Oedipus Rex and the Sphinx. When the Sphinx asked Oedipus, he says, "What walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 legs at noon, and 3 legs at night?" And Oedipus was able to solve the Sphinx's riddle, and he said, "Well, the answer to that is man." And then I believe the Sphinx was cast down from his or her lofty perch into the sea, but the Sphinx perished and had pretty much offered up the secrets of Mother Nature, because the answer to the riddle to the Sphinx, which the Sphinx actually represents the riddle of nature itself, the answer to nature itself, the answer to the riddle of nature itself is man. And there's a very old belief that comes out of Persia that Friedrich Nietzsche, in his first book, The Birth of Tragedy, spoke at a fair amount of detail, not terribly great detail, but he went to a considerable detail in the early part of The Birth of Tragedy, where he said that there is a very old popular belief that came out of Persia, and it's connected with the Sphinx, and that is that this idea of some kind of enormously unnatural event, a violation of nature, is required in order to penetrate the secrets of nature. So in order to penetrate the secrets of Mother Nature herself, you have to violate nature. And this is a very old idea, and it has always been associated with the Sphinx.
That's crazy.
And we kind of see it. Oh, go ahead.
No. I never knew that. That's so interesting to me.
And it kind of segues into the story of Jesus Christ, and there's a moment on the cross when Jesus says, right before he gives up the ghost, he says, my God, why hast thou forsaken me?" And they could be some of the most bone-chilling, scary, most horrific words ever spoken, because in that moment we have God himself. So we have God himself as represented as the Son calling out to his Father in the heavens, and we have the creator of the universe is so taken by the horror and the shock and the terror of the event that the creator of the universe actually trembles, and in a moment of crisis has to look away, because what's happening in the creation is too much for even God himself to face. So there's a moment of crisis where even God himself has to look away, because again, there's nothing. What is more unnatural than the killing of God? It doesn't get any more now. I mean, so obviously circling back to Oedipus and the Sphinx. So Oedipus kills his father, which is, there's nothing more unnatural than killing your father, and he marries his mother. So there's nothing more unnatural than marrying your mother and killing your father. And by virtue of throwing these two enormously unnatural events together, something akin to nuclear fusion occurs, and Mother Nature herself offers up the riddle of life, the riddle of nature, which is man, that we are the answer to the enigma of existence itself. And the same thing happens with the story of Christ on the cross, where at that very moment of crisis, right before he gives up the ghost, again, even the creator of the universe has to look away, because it is such an unnatural event that it penetrates into the very deepest essence of existence itself. And then once that happens, God the Son is risen 3 days later. And we have the connection with the physical sun, where the 3 days between the winter solstice on December 20th and December 25th, those are the 3 days where the sun is neither ascending nor descending on the horizon at sunrise. So we have the symbolism and the synchronicity with the movement of the heavenly bodies embedded into the most famous story in history itself. So these stories that, they are imbued with unfathomable power and mystery if we are able to penetrate these mysteries. And it works its way into what's going on with the technological singularity as well, because there's a moment of crisis where people are confused, and it reaches a fever pitch where people are saying, what is real? I don't know what to believe. I mean, why should I believe anything? But it's just ultimately it's forcing us to confront who we are, what we are, and where we are, and what life is all about. And the fingerprints of this eternal truth are spread all throughout history. They're spread all throughout all the megalithic structures across the planet that are in coordination with the astronomy and the movement of the heavenly bodies. And it's overwhelming with all the different moving parts. It's difficult to put the whole piece together. But if you're able to peer into the mysteries and put your finger on the very quick of existence, it starts taking a very definite, clear shape in one's mind.
Bro, this is so mind-blowing to me, because everyone's freaking out about what is real, and I go, nothing has been real since the first moving picture happened. Even the first play happens. The first play is an artificial reality created on a stage. And that production has an effect on the people watching it. If the actors are great and the story is great, it affects you. And it begins to change how you see the world. So everyone's freaking out about this AI this and AI this, but it's like, what was real? Especially, and then in quantum leaps, we're talking about quantum leap right now. Quantum leap happened the minute you put a television in your house.
No, the actors were all male. I don't know if you remember, there was no female actors.
That's even it. The Kabuki theater. I mean,
I would argue it goes back to even the first lie, to original sin, because, someone could be acting and live in your house with you and you not know them. I mean, so yeah, I get what you're saying. I mean, then that's more impressive than any AI, because we're, as humans, well trained and deceived.
Right. It's just like, I mean, you really want, so he brought up the you brought up the Charlie Kirk thing. I mean, what about the JFK assassination? I mean, that's like how many years ago, and people are still arguing what actually happened there, because this film by a 33rd Freemason comes out 10 years later, and there's just things in it that don't make sense.
What was that play, Johnny, where they played on the radio and everyone freaked out?
Oh, yeah, War of the Worlds. Yeah.
War of the Worlds. People freaking out, thinking that's real, and it was just all fake.
Oh, dude.
Yeah, now I mean, the tools are more sophisticated now, for sure, technologically.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it's never been the case that someone could make a video.
Well, instead of using controlled op human beings placed in positions to manipulate energy. And that's why kind of this Charlie Kirk is both old school manipulation and new school manipulation.
I was going to say NASA a lot of money in faking all this.
Yeah, I mean, so this is amazing to me. So, the movie, I was working at a hotel, the Argyle, and the Wachowski brothers were there while they were filming it and why they were editing it, and I got to talk to them back when they were the brothers, not the sisters, and they were the nicest guys. I mean, I'm going to tell you, they couldn't been like they talked to a lonely valet for like 10 minutes about like what they were doing. They were the nicest
That's
fucking
so
guy,
cool, man.
right? And I remember going to it, I go, whoa, I didn't realize how big this was,
How big what was?
how big the movie was.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh.
I mean, just think about that. That was a movie that really nobody expected anything from it, and it had such a giant
Pivotal.
impact.
It's a pivotal film in the
Right?
history of
It
Hollywood.
just changed everything. And
I was young. Was it expected to do that, or was it just a movie
I don't think
that
people
was?
were looking at The Matrix
Not-
as
yeah.
like it's going to be the.
I mean, it was going to be a big movie, but not. I
Yeah,
mean,
but
Keanu
it wasn't
Reeves,
an Avatar type movie
No,
where
no,
people are like, we're about to see a quantum leap in something. And it was a quantum leap. But the discussion of The Matrix has been happening ever since then. They put a name on it. I don't know if The Matrix was the name before that, but it is the Matrix of the computer generated illusion around us. So the question is, are we seeing the birth of a matrix within the matrix we already live in?
Well, that's a great question, Sam, and I was going to bring it up if you didn't go there. So yeah, again, it's when people ask themselves, are we living in a simulation, or are we living in a matrix, and are we witnessing the genesis of another matrix as people put all their focus and energy
Yes.
and attention and life into these smartphones? Are we witnessing the genesis of a matrix within a matrix? And again, it comes back to asking those basic questions. Well, what if this is the matrix, and if this is a simulation? Well, then what or where is baseline reality? Like where is natural Earth? Where is the original Earth? Right? I mean, if we're in a video game, what's going on outside of the video game? Right? That's the question. So it begs a whole mountain, an iceberg of questions that I think very few people even begin to entertain asking. So but because it ultimately brings us back to those first basic fundamental questions of what is life, what is this universe, how is this universe constructed, what is the very nature. It comes back to the nature of being itself. And again, everything is a dream. Life is literally a dream, and there are probably infinite worlds, and we see a glimpse of these worlds in the New Testament and Hinduism. Just to use two examples, and then we'll come back to your question. And that is that, like, there's a moment where the Apostle Paul says that he remembered 14 years ago when a man was caught up into the third heaven, and he was describing himself, but he didn't explicitly state that he was describing himself, but it's implied obviously in the text that he was describing himself. But he said, I remember a man 14 years ago being caught up into the third heaven, and he saw things there that he couldn't even begin to describe, or couldn't even begin to describe, or even begin to conceive of how he could describe this third heaven once he came back to our world again. So he said that he saw things, he saw and experienced things that he didn't even begin to be equipped to describe what he saw. And there are other references where Paul says that he knows that once we leave this world, that there are other worlds out there that will just make this reality pale in comparison to what we have to experience once we leave this planet. And it's not to minimize or denigrate the human experience, but we lose track of the fact that this is one world where we have an experience as a human being, and that there are infinite other worlds. And there's the other example I wanted to use was by a holy man named Swami Sri Yugdaswar, who was the guru of Yogananda, who reached much greater fame in the United States. And his autobiography of a yogi was Steve Jobs of Apple Computer's favorite book. But in any case, Swami Sri Yugdaswar wrote a book titled The Holy Science in 1894, where he offers glimpses into at least 7 other worlds, and how we get to those worlds, and how we have to purify our hearts. And we, by virtue of purifying our hearts become a stargate with the sun, and from there that's like our launching pad to at least there are 7 other worlds that the Hindu tradition, based upon the Vedic scriptures, is privy to. But from there, it's literally to infinity and beyond. I mean, so we are just beginning to scratch the surface with what we're talking about here. But all of the, I'm not going to say all of it, but there are so many traces and and there is so much circumstantial evidence of us being in one world within an infinite variety of other worlds throughout all of existence itself. All the fingerprints are there throughout history. It's just because that mountain of circumstantial evidence is so enormous that it begs the question: where do you begin to have that conversation? Because there's so much information, there's so much detail to it that it's not easy to figure out where to begin. And I believe that the full understanding of what's going on with the technological singularity and how, well, just the Bible itself speaks of two singularities: the singularity of darkness in the book of Genesis, the formless void out of which the Creator creates the creation of a world of duality. And from there, at the end of the book of Revelation, where the singularity of light as the New Jerusalem and the new heavens and new earth are descending from the heavens, they are described in no uncertain terms as another singularity, but this time it's a singularity of light. So we're seeing our world of duality being given birth from a singularity of darkness in the beginning, being transformed into another singularity of light. And the entire narrative of the human race is told in beautiful, barbaric, and at times just infinitely, what word am I looking for? Just evanescent, that's not even the right word, but just in beautiful poetry and symbolism all throughout the Bible is telling this great drama that we are experiencing. But even that in and of itself is just a blink of an eye of what we have to experience in eternity, in infinity. So it's really the biggest question for me is, where do you start? Because I think that it's we start with the global conspiracy, we start with the lizard people, we could start with David Icke and the 15,000 or 10,000 pages that he's written since 1993. And it's just the mountain just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and just the intricacy of the detail just gets compounded and compounded and compounded. And it's so easy to lose ourselves in the multiplicity of detail. But I think if we're able to put our finger on the origin and where it begins, well, then a framework starts to take shape in our mind's eye, and all this chaos and all this confusion, we're able to make sense of it if we know where to begin.
That's a great bringing up. Like, what is the role of we'll call them lizard people, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers? Are they a virus within the singularity or within the matrix? Are they a necessary quote unquote evil to test us, to learn life lessons? Like what is their role in all this? Because it's a big reason why we're, as society in a whole, is very nervous about the singularity. It's like if you go into, like, the big push right now is digital IDs. Well, what comes with digital IDs is total control and domination. We see it coming out of China, but what do we know? What's real coming out of China? I mean, the COVID comes out of China. We just see Chinese people fall into the street. Yet that never really happens here until people get the vaccine. And then we see them start falling down and doing all that stuff. So what is the reality? What is the truth? And so this duality of light and dark. And we'll sign the quote unquote lizard people, the archons, whatever we want to call them, the dark side of this matrix. What do you feel is their role in it? Why are they here? Are they a necessary evil to give texture to this experience that we're having within this simulation?
For all I know, they could just merely be a projection of the lizard brain, of the R complex of the brain. Right? It could be as simple as that. It could be something else entirely. But this is a great question. This is a good point with where it's easy to get lost in the work that David Icke does. And I love, again, let me preface it with I love David Icke's work.
I get it.
David Icke's work, but it's difficult. You can lose yourself in the weeds with all that because you ask yourself, well, then what is the agenda of the lizard people? I mean, do they have poetry? Do they have architects? Do they go out in the gardens and admire the flowers and listen to the birds? Do they write sonnets in their free time? Do they have a baseball league? Do they play football? Do they have their own movies as well? It's like, what I mean, again, it just beggars so many other questions that are just dangling out there in the ether that are impossible to answer. So it's it's how many angels can dance on the head of a needle. So I to that point I really don't know, but ultimately it doesn't change the ultimate truth of reality, and that is that there is nothing but consciousness. That is what's going on with the technological singularity, and how it's the great wheel of time. So what we've realized is that the precession of the equinox. So the whole, it's not necessarily a wobble, but the phenomenon that puts our Earth with a little bit of a drag. So we move through the 12 houses of the zodiac over the course of 25,800 years, more or less, or whatever the exact numbers. I don't have it available with me. But what we've realized is that the whole phenomenon, the precession of the equinox, is in alignment with the Hindu Vedic concept of the Yuga cycle, which moves through the four different ages of the Satyuga Yuga, the Treta Yuga, Devapara Yuga, and Kali Yuga, which has its alignment with the Greek and the Egyptian and various other ancient conceptions of the Golden Age, the Silver Age, the Bronze Age, the Iron Age. And we see this same idea of movement, of the great wheel of time. We see it expressed all throughout history. We see it embedded into the argument that Socrates makes when he's arguing for the immortality of the soul. He bases it upon his theory of opposites, where he observed, when he just by virtue of observing the natural order, we see movement. We see movement between polarities. We see movement which is akin to a great circle of life that takes, well, in some cases, for the full movement through the great solar year and through a full cycle, the precession of the equinox takes the better part of 26,000 years, more or less. But we also see it. We see that same cycle. We see it in the course of the day. We see it in the course of the movement of the seasons. But again, it's just moving from one opposite to the other, from one polarity to the other. We again, it all comes down to the reconciliation of our world of duality into another singularity. And at the very root of the concept of this is something I wanted to mention with the Yuga cycle, but I forgot a little bit earlier, is that at the very essence of the concept of the Yuga cycle is the regulation of consciousness. So what happens during the course of the Yuga cycle, and again, we see this embedded into the stories of the Bible as well, is that over time, infinite eternal consciousness almost forgets who it is. And this kind of even dovetails with Graham Hancock's work, and where Graham says again and again that we are a species with the amnesia. And again, it's very difficult to put your finger on why do we have this amnesia? Why do civilizations decay over time? Why does morality decay over time? And these are not easy mysteries to unravel, but we find it in the Yuga cycle, which also finds its equipoise in our solar system going around the black hole or grand center in the Milky Way galaxy, which actually regulates consciousness over vast periods of time. And what ultimately happens is that over time, consciousness itself forgets who it is. And then it starts looking for itself. And the observer forgets that it's the observed. And that's how we get trapped in this psychological hall of mirrors of our world of duality, where we forget who we are, that there is nothing but consciousness. Everything is consciousness.
What is consciousness to you? What is
consciousness? Is God. It's the great spirit that permeates all of existence. That's what consciousness is.
Man, this is awesome. It's such a...
And we're going to remember this. I mean, I think more and more people are remembering it in different ways with what's, especially since the 60s with the hippie movement and the beatniks and the age of Aquarius and the idea that the Mayan calendar ending in 2012, and even a lot of evangelical Christians trace their idea of the tribulation and the rapture happening at the end of the 20th century or now into the 21st century, that it's right around the corner, this idea of moving into a new age. We have so many different narratives and stories and allegories and just various stories that we tell ourselves and share with each other, trying to express this feeling, this understanding, this sentiment. And it's not easy to explain it or express it, but more and more people, it's gathering as the momentum gathers. More and more people are waking up to the ultimate unity of the universe, and where things that were merely considered, woo or psychobabble, are making a lot more sense the more we understand how this universe works, the relationship that artificial intelligence has in a historical perspective and how it's pretty much showing it's giving us insight into these ancient allegories that we find in the Old Testament, we find in the Hopi Indian stories, we find them again in the Vedic scriptures, we found them all across the world. But it's allowing us, and as you mentioned, the Matrix earlier. The Matrix was just awash with symbolism from the Bible as well as other various religious traditions. But what's happening with technology is that technology and artificial intelligence is literally showing us that life is a dream, that perception creates reality. And these phrases, again, they may have sounded like hackneyed platitudes years ago, but they're not anymore. But they're taking on greater and greater focus and clarity as we literally see before our very eyes, that we can see something that is simulated seamlessly with such precision and sophistication on our phones that isn't real, but we don't know until we're told. So it's forcing us to really tangibly experience this idea that literally perception doesn't just influence or shape reality, that perception creates reality. And speaking of movies and predictive programming, there was a great movie that came out back in 1992. It was titled Sneakers. And I for some reason, I always end up telling this story at some point when I have this conversation, but it's one of the greatest illustrations came from this movie Sneakers in 1992 with Robert Redford and Ben Kingsley and Sidney Poitier, and I think River Phoenix was in it right before he died. But there was a scene where Robert Redford is having a conversation with Ben Kingsley, and they're talking about the stock market, and they're talking about how the stock market literally creates reality from just, or excuse me, let me back up a little bit. They're talking about how you can literally create a new market in the stock market from whole cloth, from just making up a lie, from making up a rumor. So you take a company that is integral to the market internationally, and hundreds of other businesses do business with this one major business, and you just start a rumor that there's something wrong with this company that is one of the most preeminent integral companies globally, and all these other companies tangentially do work with it as well. And you just start this rumor that there's something wrong with their manufacturing or distribution or production or whatever the case may be, or maybe the CEO is diddling little boys or whatever the case may be. And it has to be a complete lie, and it's not true at all. And this great company is a well-oiled machine, and there's nothing wrong. The toilets are clean, the floors are clean, everybody's happy. But you just sow uncertainty. You sow the rumor of that there's something wrong with this company, and then stock owners, people that hold stock in this company get nervous. They start selling off, and then people that own stock in the businesses that do business with this company, they get nervous and they start selling their stock. Then stocks start plummeting, and then all of a sudden, from a lie, from pure whole cloth, you have literally created a new economy from nothing, from a lie. And it's just to illustrate that one illustration alone shows you the power of perception. And if you're able to control and manipulate information on a global scale, the capability to wield power is unimaginable.
Yeah, look at the weapons of mass destruction. Even if we put aside the Stargate stuff and we were sold that they had nuclear weapons, none of that's real. And now Iraq has a new reality. We have a new reality. We live with certain laws that we didn't have to deal with before. Unbelievable, dude. It's like,
and saying, just to go down an interesting rabbit hole with Iraq, part of the reason why we went into Iraq was because there were relics in the museums in Babylon that dated back to ancient Sumeria or Mesopotamia, and there were certain relics and evidence that were in the museums in Babylon that were absolutely priceless, and you couldn't find them anywhere on Earth. And it gets into the ancient astronauts, genetic engineering with Zecharia Sitchin, Planet Nibiru, and part of the reason why we went into Iraq was to either one, destroy those relics, or to gather up all the loose ends and
confiscate them
somewhere, whether they're underneath Fort Knox or whether they're underneath that Air Force Base in Albuquerque, New Mexico, where you can take an elevator into the earth for 10 minutes before you see the under earth. Again, we can go down the rabbit hole in this, but it's also true as well. That's one of the main reasons why we went into Iraq, was because there were records that were only to be found in Iraq.
And there's also beliefs that there many wars, if not all wars, are about destroying the old world. I mean, just think about what World War II did to Europe and how big Europe was, a giant part of our humanity's history, all gone. You know, I mean, all the areas that we bombed and destroyed forever, and all that knowledge is gone. I mean, the Library of Alexandria, bang, all that knowledge gone. I personally think they got all the books out, then they burnt it down, and then they saved all that stuff. And who knows what's behind, below the Vatican, which gets into mystery schools. And what is your thoughts on mystery schools, and what is the purpose of them? I just ordered a Patrick Ewing Georgetown jersey, right? And everyone's going to lose their mind because Patrick Ewing's number was 33. I've been following Patrick Ewing since the moment he went to Georgetown. He's my favorite player. He's why I love basketball.
Because it was number 33? Is that why?
I guess as a 5-year-old or however old I was, 8 years old, I was already
got you
part
early,
of it.
huh?
I mean, it's so stupid.
They got you early.
But, the fittest flat earther will do his retarded. By the way, Dana sent me the fittest flat earther video one time about this. This guy's an idiot,
An
right?
insane person.
So,
Francis Bacon.
yeah, I mean, dude, and have you heard that everyone says him and his wife are the guys who bombed Oklahoma City? So I sent that video to him, and he got all nasty with me.
What? He's Tim McVeigh?
And the other guy, Terry Nichols,
Yeah,
and his
that's
wife is Terry Nichols.
What did he say? to that?
Tranny?
Oh, he got so
yeah, he's
angry
not happy
at me,
about
dude.
that.
It's funny. She's on the
Anyways,
other
not
foot.
to bring you in on this, Luke.
Yeah,
but,
you don't want that heat.
You mentioned something about the mystery schools.
Yes.
To bring us
Well,
back
I
to the
have
point.
friends who are, I have Freemason friends, and I talk to them all the time. They're like, it's not what people think. It's just a club and it's fun and it's all this stuff. One of my best friends is a Freemason. And, what are your take on these mystery schools?
I mean, I believe that they took a turn for the dark side quite some time ago. But that being said, let's get back to the very crux of what the mystery schools and the Rosicrucians and the Freemasons are all about. But it's about finding the God within us. That's at the very essence of it. And this goes back to Egypt and how the pyramids of Giza were places where human beings. And this is something where I want to give credit to Freddie Silva's work. I don't know if you're familiar with Freddie Silva, but I came across Freddie Silva via Graham Hancock, and Graham Hancock has just been a treasure house of knowledge and information, not just with his own work, but he does a wonderful job of promoting other people's work as well. But there was a guy named Freddie Silver who did a lot of work on secret societies and finding the God within us, and how these megalithic structures are portals to other dimensions and other realities, whether they're out there or within our hearts or wherever the case may be. But ultimately, it's about all the secret societies. It's about finding the God within us, and it comes back to the synthesis of Egyptian sun worship and Christianity in the New Testament. When Jesus says that, when the Pharisees asked Jesus, they said, well, when can we see this kingdom of God? We're ready for it. You've been talking about it. You told us that the kingdom is at hand. Prepare ourselves. It's coming quickly. Where is it? And Jesus tells him, he says, not by observation does the kingdom come, because the kingdom of God is within you. So what does that mean? When he says not by observation, well, what on earth does that mean? Well, it means that the kingdom of God is beyond the sensory world. So we're taking language and concepts to their very limit, and to the point where just concepts and language is shattered, and it's ultimately absorbed and diffused into pure spirit. It is transcribed into pure spirit. But this whole idea of finding the kingdom of God within us, heaven within us, well, what does that mean? Is he speaking figuratively? Is he speaking literally, metaphorically? And I believe he's speaking in all those ways. I think he literally means it. Christ literally means it when he says that the kingdom of God, heaven, is within us. He means that this is where God lives. Even Don Draper in Mad Men, he said that Jesus either lives in your heart or he's nowhere else. And it's easy for us to hear that, and we laugh about it, and we intellectually, we play volleyball with it in our heads intellectually, but to to assimilate that and integrate that at the level of spirit is not easy. But this is what the mystery schools, I think, have been trying to do since time immemorial. Is there are certain techniques, there are certain ways of building architecture and positioning yourself within the architecture to attune and get yourself into to reharmonize yourself with the divinity within us. I mean, that's part of the reason why we find these organs in cathedrals from the Middle Ages that are the size of buildings, basically. I mean, it's because those organs were designed to vibrate the human body into divinity again, to put ourselves in tune with the inner divinity. But all of the teachings and all the anecdotal stories and all the enigmatic riddles, they're all designed to teach us how to find the God within us. And again, it comes back to, what does that mean when Jesus says the kingdom of God is within us? It literally means that. It means that we are it, that we are what we have been looking for all this time. That it really is that simple once you put your finger on it. And then from there, it's just an infinitude of multiplicity. And just by virtue of going from a singularity to a duality, just by introducing the observer from the observer, we have an infinitesimal perspectives just by shifting our perception incrementally. It's just one, prosaic example. But by virtue of going from 1 to 2, we have a world of novel, infinite potential. So we have all these stories that are trying to tell us of the beauty and of the multiplicity and the infinite beauty of this world and how intricate it all is. But ultimately, at its very essence, we are it. We are the enigma. We are the answer to the Sphinx's riddle. We are the answer to the riddle of nature. That we are what we have been looking for all this time. And it really is that simple. And it's not easy. It's not simple to reach that full understanding and to come to that full knowing. That sometimes takes a full lifetime or even multiple lifetimes. But that is the mystery at the very root of existence itself, is that we are the answer. We are what we've been looking for all this time.
Man, what
there is nothing but consciousness, and there are not. I mean, that's it. So, are we living in a simulation? Sure. Are we living in a matrix? Sure. What does that mean? It means ultimately that life is a dream, and that all the stories that the ancients told us, in their inscrutable ways, with their inscrutable allegories and their inscrutable stories and parables, they're all telling us in some fashion or other that we are what we've been looking for all this time.
Man.
Here's a great example when Jesus says that there's only one way to the Father, that you can't get to the Father except by going through the Son. Well, Jesus is God the Son. All the symbolism surrounding the story of Jesus that is in synchronicity with the movement of the sun and the various other planets in conjunction with the Son. So there's only one way you can only get to God the Father through the Son. So Jesus is the Son. God the Son is the Son. You get your heart right with the Son. The Son is literally a stargate to infinity.
Yes.
It is. And from there, to explain all the details on that, it would take, more time than we have in this podcast, and we'd have to go step by step through Albert Pike's books and David Icke's works, and go through all the alchemical texts of Cornelius Agrippa from the Middle Ages and unravel all that. And if you want to do that, Sam, we can sometime. But ultimately, that's what these stories are telling us, is that we are the answer. We are what we have been looking for all this time. And all the circumstantial evidence is telling us that. But perhaps by virtue of it being so overwhelming, that's why it's also so elusive as well.
Yes, this reminds me of old school tinfoil hats. I love this stuff. It is powerful, and it's just truth. And it's like perception. I've learned this very early in the show. Perception is reality. And it's like, what do you see and what are you looking for? And I can't tell you how many people are constantly in a state of high anxiety, state of high depression, all that stuff, because that's what they're looking for. I hate to say it. It's almost like you crave it.
No, you do crave it.
You crave that kind of drama. You crave that kind of, and it's just like, listen, dude, no one's been a bigger knuckle dragger than me. Dude, drugs, alcohol, sex addictions, and like the working on unwinding that part of me has taken time, but it's like it's working because I work on it all the time. I'm changing what I perceive. Man, this is a great fucking episode, dude. It's very.
And Sam, it's easy for us to be hard on ourselves, but a lot of this is operating according to inevitable, immutable mathematical law. And by that I mean so much of our behavior and so much of what makes it so difficult for consciousness, whether it's within us, and I don't mean it's just physically within us, but whether it's the consciousness that moves through us or it's the greater consciousness that permeates all of existence. Part of the reason why we are so awash with fear, worry, and anxiety, and why the world has been a veil of tears for the better part of 5,000 years, more or less. It's due to the movement of heavenly bodies, celestial bodies, and the relationship that our Earth has through the precession of the equinox, and the relationship that our solar system has to the black hole that regulates consciousness. And depending upon where our solar system is in relationship to the black hole that regulates consciousness, it's either going to create a world where it's very difficult to achieve harmony within oneself and to find the divinity within ourselves and to find that union with the greater cosmos, or it could also be much easier as we move into the higher ages and as we move back into the golden age, the Satya Yuga. Whenever that time does happen, it's going to be much easier to make that synchronistic connection with the divinity within us and to find the unity with the greater cosmos. But so much of what we experience, a lot of it is out of our hands. And I mean, I don't say that to just throw our hands up and say that we live in a completely deterministic world, because I don't believe that's the case either. But there are a lot of universal factors that are in operation that they create a mathematical framework that works, that it really throws a monkey wrench into the concept of free will. Let's just say that it makes it difficult. And I think the more we understand how it's all connected, I think it should allow us to have more grace for ourselves and more grace for others that we see struggling.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a hard question.
Oh, sure.
And it's going to be a tough one. And I'm not saying anyone gets what they deserve. That's not the point of this question. But why do bad things happen to good people? And I'm not trying to catch you. I'm honestly not trying to catch you on anything.
No, it's a good question. Let me try and answer it for you. So, because I thought about that. As we all do. But so if you're an infinite, eternal being, and you have all of existence and all of eternity and all of an infinity to occupy yourself, and as opposed to just playing Chinese checkers at the picnic table in heaven as you shuffle back and forth from the unisex bathroom, what you're going to do is you are going to create a world where you can literally experience everything, where you can experience joy, you can experience bliss, you can experience tragedy, you can experience heartache, you can experience redemption, and you can have all these experiences in varying degrees. You can have them in lukewarm degrees, you can have them in the most extreme of degrees. So you would, if you and we are, that's what I believe that's what's happening, is that we are infinite eternal beings, part of infinite eternal consciousness, having an experience. And within eternity, in infinity, there are certain mathematical laws that are put into place that allow for an infinite variety of experience with an infinite interpretation of those experiences. And it's not that difficult to establish a universe that operates upon mathematical principles that allow for a world of an infinite variety of experience with an infinite variety of interpretation of those experiences as well. So to answer your question, why do bad things happen to good people? My answer is, if you had all of eternity to occupy yourself, you're going to create a world where you can literally experience everything.
That's a wonderful explanation. That's a wonderful explanation. So earlier, and maybe this gets into a point you wanted to say, the world is coming full circle on ancient mysteries. You said something in passing earlier that these powers that be are doing all this crazy stuff, and eventually they're going to lose. Is this what we're talking about? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's part of the reconciliation of our world of duality being transformed into another singularity, and it's man, it's one of those. It's abstract. I mean, the concepts are so abstract, and I find myself I try and describe it in so many different ways in my articles and in my books, and you're trying to describe something that can't be adequately fully described. But to your point on that, what's happening is that evil itself is making its I think it's making its final desperate plea to achieve power, to achieve complete power on this planet, and it will ultimately lose. But again, we come back to well, what is evil? Where does evil come from? And it's ultimately, again, we're talking about it's the dark side of consciousness itself. I mean, it's so easy to fall into ad hominem attacks where we attack people for not having the same religious belief or political belief or whatever the case may, whatever persuasion it may be. It's very easy to fall into that pattern and habit of attacking people. But ultimately, the very root of this, it is consciousness itself is reconciling its shadow. And what we're seeing with the whether it's the Illuminati, Freemasonic, satanic deep state that has ruled this world for thousands of years. It's not like they have a playbook. Well, part of it is some of it they have a play, but it's not like they're just handing the torch from generation to generation, and then this is the rule book. This is how far we got, and this is what we got to do step by step by step. It's the spirit that moves. It's the duality of man. It's the duality of the universe itself, the light and dark, the good and evil that permeates and moves through this universe itself. Has been wrestling with this during this age of the fall of man, which has its alignment with the Kali Yuga in the Hindu Vedic tradition of the Yuga cycles. That's the Kali Yuga is the age in which war and strife and disharmony just runs rapid on the earth. And it's all due to the fact that as our solar system is moving around that black hole that regulates consciousness, depending upon where we're at, it leads to extreme disharmony and strife. And we find that expressed in its most dramatic relief in these institutions of power and how as they centralize power more and more, they get drunk on power. And the more power they get, the more drunk they get on power. And it's just one of those. It's just what happens when we're living in this dark age with the fall of man, the Kali Yuga. And see, there's a great example to illustrate this. Comes from the movie Lawrence of Arabia. I don't know if you're familiar with Lawrence of Arabia, but you have, Peter O'Toole, 30 years old, dressed up like a blue-eyed, blonde, Christ-like figure in the desert, leading the Arabs to victory in war. And there's a scene. So you have all these, you have all the symbolism of Lawrence of Arabia being represented and compared as being a Christ-like figure saving the Arabs in the desert. But there's a moment when he's brought into a conference with some of his superiors. And they say, we have this new position that we want you to take. And Lawrence of Arabia says, wait, guys, he says, I'm not suited for this job. I'm not the right man. He said, yesterday I killed an Arab. And he said, I learned something about myself. He said, I enjoyed it. And he said, that's the reason why I'm not the man for this job, is because I enjoyed killing. And so, I mean, there's something incredibly dark and sinister that lurks in the human soul during these dark ages, where if it has the opportunity to exert power and control and to inflict pain, it's one of those, you hate to even articulate it in words, but it's one of those itches that if people find their way into positions of power within these institutions that rule the world, they just want to exert, they just want to get off on it, man. It's organic. I mean, inflicting suffering on others. Unfortunately, there are people that derive a lot of pleasure from that. It's powerful. It's orgastic, and it's one of those unfortunate truths that we have to face and reconcile.
It's so interesting. And, I said this a long time ago, and I still believe it. It's like, I don't care if you're Larry Fink or Klaus Schwab or whoever, Netanyahu, whoever you think it is at the head of the thing. I think Netanyahu's a puppet, but, nothing is bigger. None of those guys, no matter how powerful they are bigger than the universe. They're all still, it's like kind of that. I forget the movie with the mystery men. What was it with the giant blue guy who was like a god? You remember? You're not
Watchmen.
The Watchmen,
Oh, yeah.
where he talks about the smartest man in the world is still a fly to him, right?
Dr. Manhattan or something.
Yeah, that
Manhattan.
either the smartest man in the world
Manhattan.
is a fly, and to me, the most evil man in the world is still a fly to the universe, right? And that there's one universal rule, and that is love, and love conquers all. And it's an old saying, and it sounds like some hippie shit, but it really is like once you get into the understanding of love and spreading love and giving it away and helping, one thing I want to teach my daughters is like your goal in life is to help others achieve their goals. That's how you flourish in this whole thing. And so when you say they're going to lose, I totally agree with that. And it seems really dark. And this whole of manufacturing reality of like they can do whatever they want and there's no repercussions. It's like right now. But do you think they're the first ones who've tried to control man? Do you think in the thousands of years that man has existed, that there hasn't been someone who tried to control everything and they fail miserably? They always fail. They fall and then they regroup and then they do it again. And this is again the cycle of like consciousness of everybody's experience. Everybody's here to experience something else. And that can get very dark when you see what's happening, like say in Palestine. And you're like, but man, that to me is a much better explanation than anything. People, it's like my sponsor says in recovery, like I don't want to rob you of your spiritual experience, and that doesn't mean I accept it or I think it's right. But that's a really great understanding of that. I want to get into the nature of reality and the nature of consciousness. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Can you be a little bit more specific?
A little thing is like the nature of reality, the nature of consciousness. You wrote artificial intelligence and its ability to simulate reality seamlessly is revealing truths about the universe that may be shocking but have a long time coming. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Did you write these notes or did Mark write these notes? Sorry.
No. It's fine. Let me think. Let me gather my thoughts for a second.
By the way, you're crushing this.
Oh well, thank you.
You really are. This has been one of my favorite episodes.
There's something that happened for me just recently when I actually read Albert Pike's Morals and Dogma twice, and I don't know how familiar you are with Gnosticism, but I was vaguely familiar with it, well, maybe over the better part of 20 years. I started reading William Blake, the poet, the British poet from the early 19th century. When I was in college, I have his complete poetry and prose on my bookshelf. I have the Exegesis of Philip K. Dick, the great eccentric science fiction writer who probably had upwards of 20 of his novels and short stories, developed into movies. And he wrote a book. He wrote something called the Exegesis, and a fraction of it, maybe 1,000 pages of a 9,000-page work, was eventually expurgated heavily to try and remove some of the most zaniest parts from it and just maybe distill it down to its essence. But that was only 1,000 pages, and that dealt with Gnosticism as well. And Albert Pike's Morals and Dogma is upwards of 1,000 pages as well, and William Blake's complete poetry and prose is almost 1,000 pages as well. And something happens, and even if you put those three together as a trifecta, there you have maybe 3,000 pages of an introduction to Gnosticism that just begins to scratch the surface of the origins of the nature of reality and the nature of being. But what it boils down to is that we're trying to describe language, even math. I mean, math is a much more precise language, but it's much more harder to understand it and to shape some have some visual, concrete image in our minds of what's going on with mathematics, and it's easier to paint a picture and to paint a picture in a story with language. But language is much more precise, much more imprecise than math. But what I've realized the more I study Gnosticism, and especially as I'm looking into Albert Pike, is that all this knowledge it ultimately comes out of Egypt, and it comes from hieroglyphics. It comes from the Sumerian cuneiform tablets. It comes from where even all numbers are merely pictograms of behavior and phenomenon and operations that happen at the just the basic level of existence itself. I mean, you take the numbers 0 and 1. Well, one is a straight line extending out to infinity forever, and the circle is representing the great wheel of time. It could represent the precession of the equinox, the great solar year, the yuga cycles. Also, if you have a circle that's large enough, any 2 points in that circle would appear to be a straight line. If you extend the if you extend the visual picture far enough. But what we're doing with language and even numbers themselves is we're trying to describe something that cannot be fully grasped in as a human being on the three-dimensional temporal plane. It can only be approximated. It can only be described with language. So when John says that in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So God is the Word. So the breath is the Word. So we could even bring this back to the Big Bang. So if there's some small, indescribably small, inconceivably heavy and dense point at which the universe began, trying to put that into symbolism and a visual representation that we as human beings can somehow or another try and visually conceive of that, the first thing that happens is there's a breath out. So something breathes out. The universe breathes out. The very first moment of creation would inevitably be something that we could. The best description for it via language would be to describe it as a breath. And from the breath, well, then from breathing, we start forming a word of some kind, whether that first word was Om or whatever the case may be. Then we have a word. So everything that if we study esoteric knowledge and we study Gnosticism, we're studying the nature of being and language and the relationship that words and numbers and hieroglyphics and all the way that the megalithic structures are in coordination with astronomical coordinates in the heavens and with the relationship that it has with the precession of the equinox. All we're merely doing with language and numbers is describing something that can only be grasped via the spirit. And I hope that doesn't sound like an evasion, but because I don't believe it is. But when we're here in this physical plane, all we can do is merely describe what is ultimately ineffable. And it gets back to why like for example, I mean, in the book of Genesis, where was it on? I guess was it after the sixth day, where God says, and God was pleased with the creation. God said, and God saw it, and He said it was good. And we were created out of God's likeness, and interpret that however you want to take it. But the whole idea of us not so much being, I mean, yes, we're created in His image and created in His likeness, but the way it's worded is that we are. The microcosm is the macrocosm. We get into Michael Talbot and the holographic universe. And again, so I'm talking about where do we find that launching point from which to understand or to even begin to understand the multiplicity of the infinitude of variety in this universe. But it ultimately boils down to that all we can do on the temporal plane is merely describe with approximations via language and numbers what is ultimately can only be comprehended in the spirit. Which gets back to the question of why was this world created in the first place? And I think for a lot of different reasons, and it would be hard for me to sit down and catalog all the bread trail from which I came to this conclusion. But I believe that this world was created for pleasure, that the physical world was created for pleasure, because there are certain pleasures that can only be had with a body, with a human body. Whether it's cheeseburgers taste good, orgasms feel good, and dipping your toes in the water at the beach at a sunny place is nice. And then even the whole game of forgetting who we are, and then studying the bread trail and picking up the bread trail and trying to put all the pieces of the puzzle together to figure out just what the hell's going on here. It's a game. It's a game. I mean, ultimately, it was created for pleasure, and then somewhere along the line, over long expanses of time, we forgot, because we are merely avatars of God, of infinite eternal consciousness, having an experience, and over long periods of time, we forgot why we created this world. But then over time, we remember why we did it. And ultimately, I think we're going to realize that the forgetting was all part of the game as well.
Yeah, because if we get reborn with all the knowledge, we're just, what are we going to experience?
What are you going to do? Yeah, exactly. So if you're born into this world with having all the answers to all the mysteries of existence when you're born into this world, what are you going to do? I mean, where's the intrigue? Where's the adventure?
Would you say that's where deja vu jumps in? Would you say that's where deja vu jumps in?
Maybe it's
absolutely,
like you've experienced that before. And it's like I battle gluttony, like indulging in my vices a lot, and it's so funny, as I go in this spiritual journey, I look at all the sins and I go, yep, and it's that this kind of belief that these are things that, if over time, has been learned, if you indulge too much of this and that. Obviously, we're not talking about murder. Murder's awful. Put that one to the side. And we all agree that's bad. But all these other things are just, if you do it too much, it causes energy, and maybe even dark, dense material energy, which is low vibrational. So it's like, is sex bad? No. If banging everything that moves, there seems to be some kind of energy with that can get out of control. Eating too much, you get too fat. Lying too much, nobody trusts you. Right? Trying to bang your friend's wife, bad idea. These are just kind of rules, if you kind of look at them and apply them to your life the best you can, which to me is kind of like Grand Theft Auto. What can you do, what you can't do, or whatever video game you're playing. There's certain things, if you do more of it, you win, and you do more of the bad stuff, you lose. That's what it seems like it to me. And that fits to me in the simulation, for sure. Matrix, all that shit.
I also feel like the elite.
When you guys mentioned deja vu before, I mean, I don't mean to interrupt, but I wanted to come to it before I forget, because it was a great point. You mentioned deja vu.
Nice,
and I think what deja vu intimates to is that in the New Testament alone, there are 147 verses that make some reference to, in order for the scriptures to be fulfilled, this had to happen, or in order for it is written, therefore this has to happen. So it really begs the question, why did the authors of the New Testament, which is really, it's not that long of a volume, why did they find it necessary on at least 147 occasions to mention that something was happening according to a script? In order to fulfill the scriptures, this had to happen. It's literally 147 occasions. Why is that necessary? I mean, there's something going on here it's just unbelievably mysterious, and it's enigmatic. It's all those things, but ultimately, it's also telling us that life is a movie dream. I mean, everything has to fall in order to maximize the adventure and the excitement and the intrigue and to follow the great drama and to enjoy the drama the most. It was written prior in order to maximize the dream. It had to have been written.
It's interesting. There's a big discussion right now that all these world events going on is these crazy elders trying to fulfill prophecies and follow script. You hear that all the time. Like, none of this is naturally happening. All of this is manipulation, which just goes back again to what we're talking about. What is real? What is not real? But it's like they're following a script. That fits.
Yeah, that gets in. Manly P. Hall said that 100 years ago in The Secret Teachings of All Ages. He said that there were a certain group of immortal elites that kept on reincarnating to come back into this world, again to correct what they perceived was the error of creating the world of duality by the demiurge. So they believed that a small g created this pale imitation Earth that is not baseline reality, but it was something like a digital imperfect copy of original baseline Earth, was created by an inferior small g demiurge god, and that they believe that these immortals have been reincarnating over and over again in order to correct that error. Ergo, the New World Order, the One World Order, which is at the very root of the global conspiracy, which is the great work of the ages, is ultimately designed to correct what they perceive as the world of duality, transforming it into another singularity, into another unity. So this whole idea, it dovetails with what's going on with the singularity. And to even further deepen the intrigue is that in the book of Revelation, in chapter 20, I think it's verse 4 and verse 7, so it states it twice in the third to last chapter of the book of Revelation, the last book of the Bible. It says that before the new heavens and the new earth and before the new Jerusalem descends from the heavens, the devil will be set loose on the world for a short season to deceive the world. Right before we move into the next age, right before the world of duality is transformed into another singularity of light where God will be that temple and he will reign forever and ever. And those of us who have his name written on our foreheads, which I believe is infinite, eternal God consciousness, complete union with the universe. But nevertheless, the Bible itself tells us that right as we move, as the world is moving into the next age, whether it's completing a great wheel of time or it's moving into the next age within the procession of within the 12 houses of the zodiac, something crazy happens within the transitional stage into the next age. And so we're seeing this and the devil, I mean, what the devil is obviously the father of all lies, and he represents deception and universal deceit. And I think there's no greater, more apt term to describe our world today than a world awash with universal deceit. So the Bible, in very cryptic, enigmatic symbolism and language, is telling us exactly what's happening right here, if we're able to read the tea leaves.
So, I mean, if it's a game and the elite know it's a game, wouldn't some people treat it like Grand Theft Auto and be bad?
They seem like they are.
That's what I'm saying. They just don't
Good
care.
point.
Yeah,
Great point.
Because some of us would treat it like good people and be like, "Hey, I'm gonna be a good person in this game," and if they know it's a game, we're like, "Why not go murder people? I get to relive it again." If you have that evil mindset.
Yeah. I mean, again, this is everybody's spiritual experience.
It's where all the revelation, the method stuff comes in, right? Because that's part of the rules of the game. It seems.
Yeah, and the whole thing about maybe karma coming in, like in the last life you were an awful person. This life you feel the blunt force of awful people. And I'm not saying everyone deserves what happened to them. I'm not saying that at all. It's way more complex than that. But it's super interesting.
Are you a don't go into the light guy? We always ask about
that's
that.
it. Are you a don't go into the light guy? Like the whole theory of, canon.
I know what you mean. Go ahead. I'm sorry. It brought a smile on my face. Go ahead.
But what is your thoughts on that? Like, you die and all of a sudden your grandma shows up and she's like, come with me. And it's really an archon. You should punch your grandma and go, I don't want to go in there.
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes back to the fact that once people know what we are, who we are, where we are, and once they understand the very essence of what life itself is that we are literally God himself, herself, itself, experiencing itself in eternity, in infinity, and that we're playing hide. It's just merely God, infinite, eternal consciousness, playing hide and seek within the creation. Once people really get that at a cellular level, once they are able to fully integrate that into the spirit, there's nothing to be afraid of. There's literally nothing to be afraid of. And to you, there was a point when one of you guys mentioned comparing it to Grand Theft Auto, where if you know that you're a video
You're
game,
killing it today,
they would exert power because they know it's just a game. So when they die, they're just going to be reborn into another world or this world or whatever the case may be. But there's something that, again, Friedrich Nietzsche says that this world, and I think this applies to the fall of man, the Kali Yuga, the dark age that we find ourselves in. Again, this is all in conjunction with the precession of the equinox and where our solar system is in relationship to the black hole that regulates consciousness in our universe, in our solar system. It comes back to when we are in this dark age, which I believe has been going on for the better part of at least 5,000 years. I mean, it's an approximation, but I think that's a pretty fair ballpark figure. That within this dark fallen age, the will to power is writ large on the face of existence. Where Friedrich Nietzsche said that the world is merely a will to power and nothing else. And I think that it's true to a great extent, and I think it's true in a manner of speaking. I wouldn't take it literally to its most extreme. Well, maybe I would sometimes. It depends upon what side of the bed I got up that morning, I guess. But no, it's true. I mean, this world, and we see it especially within the church and the state. This exertion of the will to power, people just get off on it. It's so much. I mean, people get so much more pleasure from that than they do anything else. It's exerting the will to power over other people. But I think that I do believe, and I do believe that only applies to when we're in this fallen age, this dark age that we're in, that we are rapidly moving out of. But I think that just applies to this current phase.
I do agree with that. I do believe that the darker it gets, the sooner it's over.
Yeah.
Because at some point, it's just going to break and fail. You cannot live in a world of low vibrational hate and power and all that stuff when love is the answer to everything. That's my humble opinion. And there is a price to pay for that in a karma type way. Man, Luke, absolutely amazing episode. So Luke, let's say people listen to this and they're blown away, and I know they are because they resonate with us and we've been blown away on this episode. Which one of your books is closest to what you've discussed today with us?
Excellent. Yeah. So I've written 3 books. There are 2 that I've written, 2 short ones on the technological singularity. Each one's 100 pages. They're more of they're philosophical treatises. I say they're relatively dense, and they're not. But I mean, I shared them with a handful of my friends that also that study fields in relationship to what I'm doing with the cyclical nature of time and kind of bringing in what's going on astronomically with the metaphysics and the spiritual metaphysical truths that we find in all religions and all philosophies. So there are 2 that I read. The 2 that I mentioned in the beginning, We Are It, The Return of Pure Cosmic Consciousness is one, and then Into the Great Beyond, The Return of Pure Cosmic Consciousness. They're each 100 pages, and there's a reason why I split them up. But if anyone once people read them, they'll recognize why I split them up into 2 volumes. But those 2, they fully encapsulate what we've been talking about here and beyond. I've written a much larger philosophical work that I also have for sale on Amazon. I'm not marketing that one right now. I mean, this is what I want to. Yeah, so there's the website, Into the Great Beyond, We Are It. Those are the 2 that I would. It's been a while since I finished those. I think Into the Great Beyond. It's been almost a year since I finished that. I have not once felt the need to go back and revisit the text and make any revisions. So I feel really good about those. Those are the 2 that will. I think should open people's minds, fully open people's minds to what I'm talking about with the technological singularity and how it's been predicted and how its fingerprints can be found all throughout history. The Musings of Daniel Pugh, Finding the Tree of Life. Again, that's a much longer autobiographical, philosophical work. It's more or less the long road out of hell that allowed me to distill the truths that I put into We Are It and Into the Great Beyond. And then also there are links to the articles that I had published on Graham Hancock's site. They can find them on that website as well. I think they're under Where to Start. If you click on Where to Start, you'll see Michelangelo. There's an article on the creation of Adam, mathematics and the creation of Adam on the Sistine Chapel.
Whoa.
There's a certain vanishing point that you have painted into the picture, the painting of the creation of Adam there. So I kind of get into how that's a visual representation of the singularity. And then there's other article that focuses more on the Vedic scriptures and the Yuga cycles. I asked the question if there are 2 Yuga cycles. If there are 2 Yuga cycles, it kind of gets into the concept of the dual star, which is that's another idea. I mean, it's not always good to introduce new ideas at the end of a conversation, but nevertheless, there was a very intriguing hypothesis that I believe has a lot of evidence that was introduced by Swami Sri Yukteswar in the introduction to the Holy Science. Evidence that we have that we're living in a dual star. There's a man named Walter Crudenden out of Greater Los Angeles has a.
Now, do you break down all these teachings?
Go ahead. I'm sorry. I'm kind of getting off.
No, it's totally fine. We go up a little bit. So you have the Bible, you have the Vedic scriptures of ancient India. Like if we click those, do those take us to or can you?
Oh no. Those are just that's just giving the briefest of introductions to what the books are about.
Okay, man, great episode, Luke. Great episode. Well, all the links below. Thank you so much. I could talk to you for hours, man. You have an open door to come back anytime if you want to get into some of the other stuff you were talking about. It was absolutely amazing. One of my favorite episodes of all time. And we appreciate you coming on, dude. Thanks for doing that. And let's break down the episode. All right. What'd you guys think of Luke?
Great guy. Old school.
US, dude, that guy loved you interviewing.
I've been killing
He's
it
like,
lately.
that's a great question. Which makes me think Mark makes up the questions.
You think I call Mark before I get in here? I'm like, hey, Mark, what should I ask?
Mark, what could I ask, bro? so when they're joking about firing you, I'll push back.
You're welcome, Mark.
Was that joking?
Are we live? Are we recording right now?
Yeah, dude, that episode was pure fire. Pure fire. Really, really opened my eyes to shit. Like all we know right now is what's in here is real.
Not even that, really. I mean, you know what? Yeah.
They didn't get XG's an AI.
What is it? I can't remember. Is it like Nietzsche or something? One of these fucks. It's like you can really only ever know that you exist. You know what I mean? That's it.
Because even what I could say could be lying.
Well, we know
yeah.
we assume that's the truth. We go with that.
Because that's what Johnny said. We went into how deep, how long has reality not been real? And Johnny said ever since we started lying.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's a form of misrepresentation of reality, right? Distortion of reality. I mean, even senses, like people have found that my perception of the color blue is not necessarily the same as yours. Like you may see blue and as something different. If you think about colorblind people, they lived an entire life. If you didn't tell them that they were colorblind, they would go around thinking that blue was that thing. That weird mix.
Well, I mean, like that gets into my discussion of doctors. Doctors only regurgitate what they've been told.
Yeah.
Well, what if that's wrong? They're only telling you wrong shit.
Well, it was for almost all of history, and even now, I would argue. I mean, they used to be a lot more wrong, back when they was like, oh, yeah, dude, you got demons in your brain. Let's just crack a hole in there and we'll let them out.
Yeah.
Thanks, doctor. Appreciate that.
Now, okay, listen. As a doctor, I've been a doctor 30 years.
I've studied for 7 years.
I've done this before. We're going to drill a hole in your head.
Yeah, just
and
a
we're
little
just going to let the demons out.
tiny little hole.
Tiny little hole, let them out.
Just let that demon
Okay,
pressure out.
and then we're just sew you right up.
Yeah.
Just sew you right up.
Gonna bleed you. That's what they were doing to, like, what was it? Washington on his deathbed. They think they really helped him die by just draining all his blood out, bro. Because they thought that was the way to get the poison out. Just drain his blood out.
Drain his blood and we'll put it back in.
Horrible. No, they don't put it back in.
No,
of
course, Johnny.
Dehydrated. And then sped his.
He's like,
along.
before we do this, give me those teeth. Spit them out real quick.
It's just not working. We're drained all his blood out. He's dying.
Roll them up. Roll them up. Squeeze it all
like
out.
a toothpaste tube.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy, dude, but nothing's real.
Nothing.
And once you
Nothing is
realize
real.
that, it's like, I think I'm going to go on and take off X for 2 hours off my phone. Put it right back there.
Good luck with that, dude.
I know, dude. I'm fighting. But it made me realize that I'm just fighting useless shit. Like I always make fun of the progressive fighting windmills. What if I'm fighting windmills?
You're tilting at windmills, Sam? Is that what you're saying?
What's that?
You're tilting at windmills?
Windmills. Yeah.
Windmills.
Yeah,
My
it
southern
sounded
accent
more
comes out.
retarded as you said it more and more.
It's my southern accent comes out.
I love it, dude. People love your
sometimes.
many different voices.
Yeah. Wait, dude,
Oh, hell no. I got an extension on my
Yeah,
Texas.
that was so funny. That guy was like,
No, hold on. That was the other show.
Yeah, was it? Okay.
Yeah.
Shit, we'll have to bring that up later. Yeah, dude, when I went away to like some kind of youth camp in DC when I was in, I don't know, probably late middle school, and I had a pretty heavy Southern accent before that, and I was around all this like Euro trash people from New York and everything.
Yeah.
And then my mom just called me on the phone one day, and I just didn't have. I had like a non-regional dialect. All of a sudden, I just started talking with a normal accent.
Oh, really?
And yeah, and I was.
Johnny, you're a mimic.
Well,
you mimic.
She tells this story that I like gaslit the family. I was like, I don't know what you guys are talking about. This is just how I talk now. And because if you hear there are videos of me as a kid, like, hey y'all, what's going on? I'm riding my horse.
Johnny, now when you got on the phone with your family, do you get really Southern? Hey y'all, how's mom, pa?
People who are used to being around me hear me on the phone with my family, and it's more, I go into that a little more, but it's not on purpose.
Back to the show. I mean, if you listen to the show and you apply what you learned, just don't let anything loose jack you. I mean, just don't get lost into it.
What do you think about people who say, because anytime it's inevitable, and I love everybody who listens to the show, literally all of you. But some of the people that follow me on Instagram now, I can't post like going to concerts without getting a bunch of like, oh, they're just jacking you loose, buddy. They're just taking your energy. I'm like, no.
But I'm having a great time. I'm having a great
the one
time.
who is fulfilled and gets energy. What do you think?
When he
about
brings up Nazism, there's going to be people who have a giant reaction to
Yes,
that.
yep.
I just don't think you can say like one thing is 100% the only way.
I agree. Yeah.
I think we've been around so long. I think there's so many manipulations involved. I mean, if he's like Jesus taught us this. Okay, we can meet in that common place, right? Jesus and just this understanding. But dude, he blew my mind about how this is a false reality created, right?
Yeah.
And that fits into that we're energy and we're batteries. And that the demiurge created this, and that there's actually a number one God with a real reality, and this is a false reality that we're trapped in. Dude, how crazy is that?
Because what did he say? This is where God comes and plays hide and seek or something like that. And I was like, whoa, that was nice.
Quote, right? Yeah. It does make you wonder if, I mean, it's just different words for what's in the Bible, though. Like, Garden of Eden is that maybe that base reality, that real and then we chose, through original sin to descend to whatever this is. And then, after death, you return to heaven. And then eventually we'll have a new heaven and a new earth, which will be the reformation of that original reality.
It's crazy.
It's what's described in the Bible.
Respect on that, dude. I loved it, dude. I thought it was one of the best episodes we've ever done. Those are my jams. I really like it. And the whole point of this is don't get lost in the AI is going to control and destroy everything. It's, AI is a tool, but maybe AI is the universe evolving. It's possible.
I don't think, to kind of follow up on what I said during the show, the Turing test, like when you had that explained to you as a kid, the idea was like you were in a blind and across from you is either a computer or a person that you interact with. And if you can't tell that thing is like reliably tell whether it's a human or a computer, then it passes the test as
and now they do that all the
intelligence.
time.
Yeah, they do it all the time, but you wouldn't say that that's the equivalent. Not even people at the time when they heard that, they were like, "Oh, well, that's going to be a human then on the other side." But the equivalent, ChatGPT, you would never say is like anything close to. It's not smart enough. It like gets shit wrong all the time. It's. But not,
this is like the basic bitch area.
Yes, exactly.
Part of AI.
I agree. That's
the new stuff they start rolling out is just going to be mind blowing.
So they say, yeah. But even
so
this,
they say.
Even this, I thought would be more impressive, and it's just. I don't know. I thought when something passed the Turing, that would be a real milestone, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure anymore. I think we may have a ways.
Well,
to
I
go
thought it was a great episode
on the consumer.
Hope you guys enjoyed it.
Yes.